Et surtout, là, vous allez être galvanisés parce qu'on a vraiment l'immense joie et l'honneur d'accueillir Satish Kumar, qui est un activiste indien et promoteur réputé, je dois dire, de la simplicité volontaire. D'ailleurs, il a publié l'an dernier un livre au titre merveilleux, je trouve, et qui lui va si bien, Elegant Simplicity. Alors, nous allons switcher en anglais, in English, pour tous ceux qui préfèrent avoir la traduction française. Donc, je vous rappelle les étapes à suivre. Vous cliquez sur l'icône changer de langue, puis vous sélectionnez French dans le menu déroulant. Vous appuyez sur le bouton Connect pour lancer la traduction. Vous pouvez réduire la fenêtre de traduction en cliquant sur les 3 petits points en haut à droite ou bien en cliquant sur l'icône du globe. Et lorsque la traduction sera finie, mais là, donc, on va enchaîner avec effectivement 2 intervenants qui parlent anglais. Mais quand la traduction, vous n'en avez plus besoin, vous cliquez sur Disconnect et vous pensez bien à réactiver le live. Et enfin, si vous avez le moindre souci, n'oubliez pas de rafraîchir la page. N'est-ce pas, Elisabeth?
Rafraîchir la page avec un petit brumisateur. Voilà, merci beaucoup, Anne. Satish, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so honored to have you with us here in Noé. Satish, I'm going to make a very quick introduction of yourself, but you're a very famous, as Anne said, British activist and speaker. You've been a Jain monk, you will probably mention that. You've been also a nuclear disarmament activist with the famous peace walk of 8,000 miles in the 70s. Maybe again, you will tell us about it. And you're a pacifist, obviously. You've been living in England for decades, and where you founded the Schumacher College International Center for Ecological Studies. And you are editor also of Resurgence and Ecologist magazine. Satish, based on your own experience of almost 80 years as an activist, please tell us how to become activists efficient activists in our companies on a daily basis, and how to find the energy that one needs to change the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth, for your introduction. And thank you for your invitation to participate in this Noé conference. And it is my honor and pleasure to be part of your conference. And I have a lot of friends in France. So it is my pleasure to be connected, even though only virtually. I would have loved to be in face-to-face conference, but at least we are connected through technology, which is a very good thing. I would say that my activism started when I was 18 years old. I was inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. And Mahatma Gandhi in India was a kind of heroic figure. And he says that we need to create a new philosophy by which we are taking care of ourselves, personal life, we are taking care of our human community, and we are taking care of the planet Earth. This trinity, which I translated as soil, soul, and society. This trinity was the deep and profound message of Mahatma Gandhi. So at 18, I joined the Gandhian community and a Gandhian ashram, became an activist. And then at age 26, I was inspired by the nuclear disarmament movement around the world. Particularly, there was a British philosopher, Bertrand Russell. At age 90, he decided to demonstrate and get arrested. And he was in jail for protesting against the nuclear weapons. And I was a young man in India at that time. And I said, here is a man of 90 going to jail for peace in the world. What am I doing, young man, sitting here drinking coffee in a cafe house? So that was the inspiration. So with a friend of mine, I started to walk for peace. Of course, I remain the Gandhian pacifist as well. And I said, we have to make peace with ourselves, because quite often we are not at peace within ourselves. And if we are not at peace within ourselves, we cannot make peace in the world. And if we make peace in the world, the world is made of humans, but also nature. So we have to make peace with human world, and also we have to make peace nature, peace with planet Earth. The way humanity is treating the planet Earth is like being at war with nature and at war with planet Earth. The way we are destroying our rainforests, for example, the way we are polluting our oceans with plastic, for example, the way we are treating animals in factory farms, for example, the way we are treating our soil with chemicals and fertilizers and pesticides and all the kind of chemicals we put in the soil. All these acts are like war with nature. And so when I was going for nuclear disarmament around the world, that was the headline. That was the kind of big, everybody understood that we want to walk against nuclear weapons. But behind that nuclear weapons idea was that we have to make peace with nature, peace with people, and peace within ourselves. And when we make peace with people, I was also speaking, that's not only the absence of war. Peace is more than just absence of war. Peace is a way of life. And peace is acceptance of diversity. At the moment, we are divided in the name of nationality, in the name of religion, in the name of politics, in the name of race, in the name of color, in the name of many, many things. We divide ourselves. That is absence of peace. So my message during the walk around the world was to people that before we are Indians, Pakistanis, Russians, French, German, Americans, Africans, we are human beings. Before we are Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, Sikhs, we are human beings. And once we have that unity of life, that is the way to peace. And then we celebrate the diversity. Being French, being German, being Russian, being Indian, being American, it's a diversity. Being a Hindu, being a Muslim, being a Christian, being a black, being white, being man, being woman, being different colors, different races, it's a diversity, not division. So we, in order to make peace in the world, we shift from division to diversity. And we celebrate diversity. We celebrate, it's a wonderful that evolution over the billions of years has created this wonderful diversity. In the beginning of the time, at the time of Big Bang, there was no diversity, but only gases, and then later water. And then slowly, slowly, over billions and billions of years, evolution has created this diversity of many species and many different kinds of human beings and many philosophies and many nationalities and many colors and many religions, many, many things. So we should celebrate this diversity. So this was the message that I carried on and walking on foot without any money in my pocket, because I said that we cannot make peace in the world unless we have trust in our hearts. We have to trust humanity. And so if I have money, then I can go in a restaurant to eat. I can go in a hotel to sleep. But when I have no money, I have to depend on people and people's hospitality. And so that way, trusting people will be my way of making peace in the world. And so I walked through Muslim countries, Christian countries, communist countries, capitalist countries, poor people, rich people. I went to the Kremlin. I went to the White House. I was in front of Palace Élysée demonstrating for peace, and many, many things I did. But all for 2.5 years, 8,000 miles. So that's my main activism in the young time. And that has remained. Now I'm 84 and I'm still an activist and I'm not exhausted. Many times, people who are long-term activists, they get exhausted. They have burnout. They have kind of anxiety. Why I do not have burnout or anxiety? because I offer my activism out of my love for humanity, out of my love for nature, out of my love for planet Earth, all the wonderful species, wonderful forest, wonderful animals, wonderful humanity. When you love something, then you are in the service of the humanity, and you are in the service of planet Earth. And when you are in the service, that is a long-term commitment. It's not a short-term achievement. So it's not that I want to achieve something tomorrow. I'm in the service. As long as I'm alive, I will remain in the service. So with that sense of service, I have devoted my life to an ecological sustainability. And ecological sustainability comes from 2 or 3 things. First of all, we have to have imagination. At the moment, our society is suffering from the lack of imagination. We have to imagine that a wonderful utopian world is possible. We have to imagine that we can live on this planet Earth in peace, without wars, without nuclear weapons. We have to imagine that we can live in harmony with nature and with planet Earth and all the species on this planet Earth. So imagination is the key to our future development of sustainability. And our universities, our schools and colleges, our society, our industry, our business, they do not encourage imagination. They encourage profit making, they encourage economic growth, they encourage people to become bigger and bigger and bigger, their companies, and bigger business. But I would say that every business, every government, every industry, every university, every media, whatever we are doing, we should put the imagination at the center of our activities. Imagine a world, a beautiful world, a holistic and a more harmonious world. We have to imagine that. Second, after imagination, we have to have an innovation. We have to develop ideas and practical technology which are not harming or destroying nature or harming human beings. We have to create technologies which are benign technologies. We have to create innovation which can be, without any pollution, without any waste. Because in my view, pollution and waste is sin against nature. In nature, there is no pollution. In nature, there is no waste. Everything is recycled. But human economy is a linear economy. We take from nature, we use it, and we throw it away, waste. Lot of plastic in our oceans. Lot of landfills are full of rubbish. And our rivers, we cannot drink water from the rivers because they are polluted. Even swimming is becoming less and less. And therefore, we need to create innovation which has no waste and no pollution. And then after innovation, we have to implementation. We have to be not only sort of be very kind of go with the world as it is. We have to implement new ideas, new technologies, new way of life. So I would say these 3 words: imagination, innovation, and implementation. These are the 3 words in order to create a sustainable, harmonious future for humanity. And I would like to say that at the moment, business and economy have got a confusion between means and ends. We have seen nature as a means to make profit. Nature has become a means to make economic growth. And also humans have become means to an end. Human resources, we call them. Nature is a resource for economy, and humans are also a resource for the economy. This is the biggest confusion of means and ends in our society. We have to move away from this idea that nature is a means to an end of economic growth, and humans are also means to an end for economic growth. and profit. We have to say that economy is means and nature and humans are the end. The goal of our activity should be the well-being of humanity, happiness of humanity, and well-being and integrity of nature. So nature is not a resource for the economic growth. Nature is a source of life. This is a big change in our attitude, big change in our values. At the moment, the prevailing value is the use nature, because nature is freely available. Use forests, use water, use soil, use animals just to make profit. And production and consumption has become the motto of our modern society. So business world has to be the engine of this new change. Business world has responsibility, because we need business. Without business, we cannot survive. We need food to be distributed and grown. We need clothes to be produced and distributed. We need houses, we need shoes, we need furniture, we need books, we need many, many things. So business is important, but business has to take responsibility that the motivation of business has to be first and foremost well-being of the planet Earth, well-being of human beings, and of course human beings are not separate from nature. Human beings are as much nature as mountains and forests and animals and birds and all the other rivers and oceans. Humans are also nature. We are nature. Nature is there's no separation. We have to free ourselves from this Cartesian dualism of mind and matter separate and nature and humans separate. So we have to, in order to create a sustainable business and sustainable future for humanity, we have to bring an end to the idea of separation. And we have to embrace the idea of the unity of nature and humans. Humans are as much nature because we are made of earth, air, fire, water, space and time and consciousness. Animals and forests are also made of earth, fire, air, water, space, time, and also nature is alive. Planet is alive. There is a new science of Gaia, and the new science says that the planet is not a dead rock. Planet, the earth is alive. Forests are alive. Mountains are alive. And so living nature and humans and nature are one. So when we can have this attitude, then the business will be the engine of change for create a new sustainable future. So I would like to say to all our people in this audience that imagine a beautiful, sustainable, regenerative world is possible. Innovate technology which are benign and without waste and without pollution, and implement those technologies and those innovations in your practical life. And two levels of practical life. One, yourself. Start with yourself. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Change will not come from Palais Élysée or White House or the Kremlin. Change starts from you and me. And then when I change myself, then I change my company, I change my business, I change my industry, I change my town, I change my village. I start to radiate that change so that I become the radiator of transformation, radiator of change and innovation. And then, of course, we also want top-down change as well. We want Monsieur Macron and all the government leaders and the industrial leaders, we want them to change as well. So the top-down change, of course, we want to campaign for that. We want to have a movement for that, but bottom-up change as well. So when you have bottom-up and top-down change coming from two sides, then we can have a utopian, a beautiful, a wonderful, a sustainable and livable world. So activism for me is a journey of transformation. It is not a destination. It's a journey, and a journey of life, journey of transformation. And so every step we take should be a step for sustainability. So these are my few thoughts. So again, I would like to say thank you for inviting me, and I would like to answer some questions if you have, and so that we can have a little dialogue. But remember, nature is not a resource for economy. Nature is a source of life, and humans are not human resources. Humans are sacred. Human life is sacred, and our economy and our business, our industry should be in the service of humanity and service of nature, and not humanity in the service of economic growth and in the service of business and industry. So we have to get our priorities right. This is my passion. This is my concern, and this is a big change of values. And that without that change of values, we cannot change industry, business, government, education. Nothing will change. And this is what we are doing at Schumacher College. At Schumacher College, we are trying to change these values and these attitudes towards nature so that we can create new innovation and new implementation in our society. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope I have given you a few clues to remember in your work and in your daily life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Satish. Namaste.
Namaste. And
it rings a bell, and also when you read the book of Adam Grant, Give and Take, it's also this matter of give, receive, and take. And then we have a first question, which actually, do you have examples of companies that manage more to give and take, or to not only to exploit the nature but to give back to nature?
I mean, yes, there are some smaller companies which are like, for example, there was Interface Carpet Company in America, and they said that we are not going to sell the carpet. We will just rent the carpet, and our carpet will be made only with natural fiber, no other unrecyclable material. And you have the carpet, you pay a small rent per year, every year. And when your carpet is worn out, we'll come and take it away and recycle it, reuse it, and transform it again into a new carpet. And we'll bring you new carpet. So there was nothing wasted. No waste, no pollution. That was their principle. And so I think every industry can have that principle and say, we will give you these products, but we will take it back when it is not usable, and we will recycle it. We will reuse it. It will be a cyclical economy, not a linear economy where you take, use, and throw away and create waste and create pollution. But a cyclical economy where whatever we take from nature will go back to nature. Like the economy of nature, we have an economy of humans. That is one example. And there are some other smaller companies. For example, there are some farms where they say there'll be no waste and no pollution. Everything will be organic, everything will be sustainable, and everything will be local economy, local distribution. Because we have a global distribution, then you need a lot of transportation, a lot of airports, a lot of seaports, a lot of roads, a lot of motorways and highways. But when you have a local distribution, then you need less infrastructure. And so, so those are the examples. The most important principle is create a business which has minimal pollution and minimal waste. If we can be free of pollution and waste, then that is the industry. And this carpet company had that principle at heart.
Satish, we have a question from Antoine about how do you approach consumption based on your philosophy? Like, does this mean, is this philosophy, does this mean that you need to consume less or maybe not at all? Or how do you approach consumption?
Yeah, now, consumption should be without waste. So at the moment, whatever we are producing, we don't consume. Our wardrobes are full of clothes. How many clothes can you wear on your body? But our wardrobes are full of shoes. How many shoes can you wear in your feet? Our attics are full of rubbish. Our kitchens and our offices are full of stuff which we don't use. So produce only what is really necessary and not just buying for the sake of buying. because economy encourages you to buy, buy, buy. And so we are not actually consuming, we are just shopping and putting those things in our offices, in our houses, in our workplaces. And so we need to produce quality and not just quantity. And everything we produce should have three qualities. It should be beautiful, it should be useful, and should be durable. At the moment, we don't understand and we don't embrace the beauty. We produce things just for function and not for joy and satisfaction. And so nothing should be produced which is not beautiful. But beauty is not enough by itself. Beautiful should also be useful. And so everything you make, your shoes, your clothes, your furniture, your whatever you are making, your house, whatever you are making should be useful. So it should beauty and utility go together. And the third principle is that it should be durable. It should last. In nature, things are durable. A tree can last for 500 years. An oak tree or a yew tree or a banyan tree can last for, some trees can last even 1,000 years. So we should not produce anything just for one season, fashion for one season. This fashion idea, Paris is full of lots of fashionable things like Galeries Lafayette and so on. So we should have durable. I call it the BUD principle, B-U-D, beautiful, useful, durable. Then our consumption will be of quality and not of quantity.
Thank you, Satish. B-U-D.
B-U-D.
Yeah, we will keep that in our mind. We have a question from Sofiane. Current economy is based on growth. How to reinvent and make possible a realistic worldwide growing economy with planet and humanity as the final purpose?
Yeah, actually, our economic growth is a misnomer. It's a wrong meaning we have given to the word economy. When we have economic growth, what is economy? Eco means home. The Greek word eco, oikos, home. And nomi means nomos, management of home. What is home? Home is our planet Earth, Earth home. In the philosophy of Greek, wisdom of Greek philosophers, entire planet is our home. So economy is the management of the entire planet. So at the moment, our economic growth is not growth in the planet or growth in the forest, growth in the kind of mountains, growth in the soil. We don't grow economy. We are growing money and products. So economy has become money-nomy. And that is where we need to say that like in nature, the economy of nature, a tree grows and then flowers and fruit grows, apples grow, and then you eat the apples, and what you don't eat apples go back into the soil, and soil feeds the tree. So our economic growth should be such that it can be recycled. It's like a circular economy. So there should be no economic growth. It should be circular economy. Everything coming from nature, we make clothes, we make shoes, we make furniture, we make house, and when we have finished with it, it should be such that it is biodegradable. It can go back into nature. Then it is a true economic. So we have to get away from this idea of economic growth, because it's not economic growth, it's a money growth. It's a measure of money movement around the world. And the products are produced in order to make money. Products are not produced, clothes are not produced because people need them, but clothes are produced to sell as a commodity so that they can make money. So it's not economic growth, it's a money growth and movement of money. GDP is not national product, it's a movement of money. And so we need to change this idea of economic growth. And we have to say circular economy. Economy should be in the service of need and not greed. There's enough in the world for everybody's need, but not enough for anybody's greed. Our economy is based on greed, and we are saying that greed is good, and you need more. You have to have more. You have to buy more and more. So even presidents of the world, of governments, say that when there's a crisis, there's a terrorism, or there's a war, go and shop. Shopping has become the kind of the answer to all our problems and questions. And therefore, I think a new business, sustainable business, has to move away from the idea of economic growth. And they have to embrace the idea of cyclical economy which is helping the people to meet their need, but not their greed, and not just accumulation of money and profit.
Okay,
I think you made it quite clear.
Yeah.
Thanks, Satish. We have another question from Celeste asking us whether you think there is a correlation between your vision of a peaceful activism and the principles of Hinduism, because she says most activist culture at least maybe in the Western world, are based on revolution, anger, struggle, fight. So do you think there's another approach to activism, and do you think this has a cultural flavor in it? And do you think it's possible in other cultures than Hinduism? Or
I mean, there is a little bit of Eastern spiritual, Oriental spiritual idea behind activism as service, activism as a manifestation of love. We act for society because we love humankind. We act for nature and planet Earth because we love the forest and the mountains and animals and the birds and our relationship with nature and the beauty. So Indian activism, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, and to some extent you can say Hindu philosophy, Taoist philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, but also if you take true Christian philosophy, true Christian, St. Francis, for example, and many others, love is the fundamental principle of Western philosophy as well. Love is not just a monopoly of the Indian philosophy or Hindu philosophy. And so if you become activist out of love for humanity and out of love for planet Earth, then this anger and fear and anxiety and a struggle to achieve results tomorrow, today, everything must be achieved. This kind of humility. Activism requires humility and not this arrogance that I know better, I'm right, government is wrong, business is wrong, everybody else is wrong, I'm right. This kind of arrogance is not activism. True activism is humble. And humanity, the word human comes from humility. And humanity comes from the word humus. In Latin, humus means soil. And soil is always humble. Soil is always under our feet. And so human beings cannot be humans without humility. And so activism should come out of sense of service, out of love, out of humility. We do our best in the service of humanity and the service of planet Earth. And what happens after that, we cannot control. That humility is the key to activism without anger, without anxiety, without fear, without burnout. All those things which we have is because we think I'm right, world is wrong, world must change according to my idea, and if it doesn't change, I get angry. That's not a sense of service, and that's not love. And so my activism, I am activist at 84, I'm still an activist. I'm passionate to protect the planet. I'm passionate to help the poor and help the people, but I have no anger. I have love for people. I have a love for planet Earth.
It certainly gives you a high level of energy.
Thank you.
We have two questions regarding the current situation, and for example, Claire say, "Dear Satish," I think it's nice that I read you. "Dear Satish, thank you for sharing with us your incredible energy. In light of your long and rich experience, how do you perceive today's worldwide crisis, and how do you keep your optimism up?" And I also have the question of Eleni. Do you think the COVID crisis and pandemic is related to the fact that nature is used as a resource for economic growth? Eleni, we should say money growth now, and project. So what do you think that the current situation is linked with our attitude?
Yes. Current situation of COVID crisis and coronavirus crisis is in a way kind of consequence of our broken relationship with the natural world. Humanity had been expanding its industry, its infrastructure, is agriculture, mass production, mass consumption, and taking over and encroaching the wilderness and our wild forests and our land and our wild animals. They are being reduced to minimum. Now I live in England or in Britain, there's no wildlife here. There's no natural nature untouched by humans. Almost we are bringing an end to nature. We are saying that human beings are in control, and human beings are in charge, and human beings are superior species, and we have a right to encroach and destroy wildlife and destroy forests because we humans are the rulers of the world. This is the reason that we have been on the mission of conquering nature. And that is what nature is saying, that you cannot conquer nature. You think you are all powerful, but you are not so powerful. So we have to learn from this coronavirus and this COVID crisis, and we have to become humble, and we have to reduce our expansion of industry, infrastructure, destroying wildlife with a mass scale of agriculture. This in Brazil, for example, the cash crop of soya beans and destroying the indigenous cultures, indigenous people in rainforests. That kind of expansion has to stop. So I think this crisis is a cry from the earth. It's a voice of the earth, voice of nature. We have to listen to it, and we have to create I hope post-coronavirus and post-COVID-19, humanity will not be the same. We will learn to live more humbly and more in tune and in harmony with nature, and not have so like imperialism. It's a human imperialism on nature, and we are colonizing nature. And that colonialism and imperialism has to end. And we have to be humble and restrain ourselves and take from nature as a gift. There is abundant, nature is abundant. We plant one seed in the ground, and that one seed can give us entire orchard. And one tree can give us 1,000 apples. So nature is abundant, but we are using nature in a wrong way. And so coronavirus is a kind of voice of the earth. And it's a lesson that we have to learn, and we have to change our industrial and business model and create a new imagination of a world where we can live in harmony and allow wildlife and allow biodiversity to flourish.
Thank you very much, Satish. We have another question from Jean-Marie, who's asking, do you have some tips to give our participants and us on how to become an activist in our companies? So people in the audience work for Danone, they work for BNP Paribas Bank, they work for Engie, which is a utilities company, they work for Hermes, they work for L'Oréal. How to become an activist out of love and service in those companies, in the daily business life?
It's a great question because it's the last one, actually.
Last one, okay.
Thank you.
First and foremost, we have to have a different motivation. To be an activist, you have to be an optimist. You cannot be an activist without being an optimist. You have to have this motivation that I can change and our company can change. So that's the motivation. What is the right motivation? That is, you have to consider. Then every week, people in the company should come together to discuss not how we are doing with business, how we are making profit, how we can become more profitable, how we can earn more money. Not that discussion, but how we can become more sustainable. Every week should be on the agenda, that how we can reduce our waste, how we can reduce our footprint, carbon footprint on planet Earth, how we can do, if we are using so much carbon footprint today, how next week can be a little bit less and less and less. So it's sustainability is a journey of transformation. It's not a destination. And so you have to say every week how we can reduce our waste, how we can reduce our pollution, how can we reduce our carbon footprint. If you every day, at least every week, once a week, every Friday or every Thursday, you make 2 hours to discuss your sustainability agenda and your regenerative, your company should be regenerative. and not growing, but regenerating. So regenerative economic model, if you can embrace, and every week you can do it. This industrial system is built by humans in last 200 years, 300 years. What is built by humans can be changed by humans. It's not impossible. This industrial system of mass production, mass consumption, pollution, and waste is created by humans in the last 200 or 300 years, 400 years. Before that, our ancestors lived much more frugally, and indigenous people, especially in America and even Europe, indigenous people lived in harmony with nature. So what is created by humans can be changed by humans. So have confidence in your heart, have faith in your heart, and say, we are going to change. That motivation, we are going to change. And we will live a life which is beautiful, which is abundant, which is joyful, which is happy. We will dance, we will sing, we will paint, we have art, we have a craft, but we are not going to have pollution. We are not going to have waste. We are not going to have this carbon footprint which creates global warming and climate change. We will grow not in economically, but we grow imaginatively, creatively, artistically, crafts-wise, dance, singing, music, poetry, philosophy. There are many, many things we can grow. And that's where joy is. That's where happiness is. Happiness is not in how much money I have in my bank, but happiness is in my imagination, in my relationship, it's my friendship, it's my love. That's where happiness is. Though every week, every company must give 2 hours to evaluate how you can reduce your carbon footprint, how can you reduce your waste, how can you reduce your pollution, and how you can make your company members happy and joyful, and every company must have food together, organic, wholesome food, eat together. No junk food, but a company means compane. Pane means bread. A company is not a company unless they share bread together. And a fresh bread, like you have a communion in the church. Every company should have a communion with bread and good French soup and good food, and sit around the company as a community. Business is a community of people. If you can make that community eat together and discuss how we make our company more joyful, not just profitable, but joyful and happy, and we'll serve the planet and we serve the humanity. If you have that motivation, you can do it. The industrial system is built by humans. It can be changed by humans, and we must change it. The coronavirus and this COVID crisis is telling us we have to change it, and change will be for better. People will be more happy, people will be more healthy, there will be less disease, less pressure on National Health Service. So we want to create a beautiful, happy, joyful, qualitative world, and not just this wasteful, polluting world. So this is my optimism, and I want every company to have that optimism. If you have optimism, then you can have activism. Without optimism, you cannot have activism.
Thank you so much.
This is wonderful, and we are fully aligned here. You have a whole community of several companies in Noah's Ark. So we think that we will be a great contributor to your vision and to your passion, and we will follow your path. Be sure of that.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure that everybody looks forward to sharing bread again with colleagues.
Yes.
We've not shared much bread recently.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Satish.
Thank you.